It takes us. All right, we're on the air.
All right.
So introduce your webinar.
Okay. Hello. This is Frank Robertson. Can you hear me, AJ?
Yes.
Okay. Frank Robertson. I am Sisseton Wahpeton Dakota, and I'm going to be leading the webinar this afternoon on visual storytelling. My background quickly is I worked for most of my career, 15, 20 years as a, excuse me, as a photojournalist and a multimedia editor in South Dakota and Ohio, Southern Ohio. And as of this past school year, I have returned to South Dakota to teach at the South Dakota State University School of Communication and Journalism. So that briefly is who I am. Let me pass this off to Priestess, since I see her name there.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Priestess Bear Stops, and I'm 22 years of age. I participated in this journalism conference last year. I am going to be going to school here very soon for general psychology and sociology, taking a couple classes this summer, actually. Really excited about that. I'm also really looking forward to coming down with you all to Miami and hopefully, getting some good stories out, stories that, need to be told and that aren't getting told on a day-to-day basis. So, yay, glad to be here. And do I have to pass it off to someone now? Can I pick someone?
Sure, go ahead and pick somebody.
I don't know. Well, is that Caitlin I see there? Can I pass this off to you now?
Yeah, let's go right ahead. Hey guys, I'm Caitlin, aka Catalina. You'll get the jokes. During the trip, I was also a person over. I was there at last conference in Anaheim. It was a lot of fun. You guys are gonna learn so much, make so many fun memories, and also, really just dive into what journalism is. I really learned so much and have grown so much as a journalist, just being a part of it, and also the mentors on this committee are just amazing. Victoria was my mentor, and she is literally like one of my besties. So we text all the time. But anyways, other than that, enjoy, soak it in, learn everything as much as you can. And I'm going to pass this off to, I think, my other blonde friend that is blonde. What is your name? Lydia? Yes. Okay. Us blondes have to stick together because we're very few in the Indian world. Anyways, okay. Here you go.
As she said, I'm Lydia. I am going to be a senior at the University of Arkansas this fall. So I'm double majoring in broadcast journalism and news editorial and double minoring in Spanish and political science. So I'm a new NAJF fellow, and I am looking forward to Miami. I cannot believe it's a little less than a couple months. That is crazy. Okay, I'm handing the torch off to Melissa. Take it away.
Okay, can y'all hear me? It takes me a second to get this all unmuted and everything. But I am Melissa Ellis. I'm actually an accounting major. I will be a senior next year. I'm from Oklahoma, and I'm looking forward to our conference in July. It's going to be really exciting. And I will hand this off to Hunter.
Hi, my name is Hunter Otolke, 22, from Tulsa. I'm a journalism major, and I'm looking forward to going to Miami with everybody. And I'll hand it off to Benjamin.
Hey guys, I'm Benjamin. I'm studying multimedia journalism at the University of New Mexico. And I'm working production crew at New Mexico PBS also. And yeah, that's just me. So excited to go to Miami also. I'll hand this off to Taylor.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Nota. I am from St. Michael's, Arizona. I currently live in Phoenix. I just recently graduated from Arizona State University with my bachelor's, majored in journalism, and this is my first year as a NAJF fellow. I'm excited. And I will pass this off to Cheyenne.
Hey everybody, my name is Cheyenne. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill about a week ago from the School of Media and Journalism. So I'm job hunting right now. I'm really excited for Miami and to meet all of you. I don't know if there's anyone else for me to pass it on to, sorry.
That's cool.
I guess I'll do a quick intro because I didn't actually introduce myself fully. My name is AJ Maruawe. I'm Comanche from originally from South Texas. I am actually currently in Portland right now, Portland State University. I am a history major, getting my second degree, first in politics, philosophy, and economics. And heading to American University for my master's in public history, so focused on digital and oral history, so lots of journalism related stuff there. I am a second year fellow, mentor in training. I am there was something else. Oh yeah, social media editor, web publishing for NAJF. So if you have issues with getting your stuff posted online, if you have stuff you want tweeted, if you have stuff that appeared online that you need corrected, like if I post something that you wrote and the link is bad, I'll fix it. So that's me. Back to Frank.
Okay, I'm back. So we have all the information, or all the introductions done. So let's go ahead and dive into the meat of this webinar, which is visual storytelling. I'm going to cover a few different areas. I'm going to cover this in about 30 minutes or so. I'm breaking it down to different sections, and I'm going to pause between those sections to open it up for a question or two if we have them along the way. If you have something really pressing that you need to ask, like right now, feel free to interject, and we can address things as we go through it. So we can kind of handle this a little bit as a dialogue, but we'll definitely have time for official Q&A at different points along the way and at the very end. So what I want to talk about today is about visuals themselves, visual storytelling, and about how to make strong images, how to make stronger images, how you become a better photographer, using smartphones to make some images, to kind of a quick tip on how to make mugshots using a smartphone, and also we're talking about cut lines, those blurbs of words that you see below an image, whether it's in print or online. Cut lines are also a pretty important part of the visual storying aspect, even though they're the word part of it. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Planning visuals. And by visuals, I mean photography and video, but I'm going to focus primarily on photography for this webinar. One of the keys to making strong images, do good visual storytelling, is keeping visuals in mind while you're planning your stories, while you're developing those story ideas. As you're developing those ideas, as you're bouncing ideas around, make sure you're thinking about what areas of this story lend itself to photography or video, and who should be photographed, and caption is usually best.
Can you just let them know we're in the back one?
Absolutely.
I'm hearing somebody else online. Anyway, so
sideswiped or something.
do we want to pause a second? So we're picking up audio from somebody in the group. Does somebody want to go ahead and mute? Awesome, got it. Okay, so moving forward. So as you're thinking about visuals, what you want to do is thinking about your story and what areas of the story lend itself to photography or to video. And not all stories will have a heavy visual emphasis, and some of them will have, you have too many options sometimes. You'll be wanting to be thinking about who should be photographed. Action is usually best for photographs for visual storytelling, but sometimes portraits or a simple mugshot is what may be appropriate. As you're thinking about your stories and you're thinking about who you're going to be interviewing and who you might be photographing for your stories, you should be asking those people when you want to take pictures of them. Ask them when they're busy. Don't ask them when you're free. That's one of the things I emphasize to reporters and to editors, because as a photographer, I've been burned by a few times when they ask that question, when are you free that we can send someone over to take a picture? As a photographer, that's not what I want. I want somebody busy doing what they do. Makes a much more compelling image. And then as you're doing that planning, as you're developing those visual ideas, seek out others along the way, whether it's other fellows, whether it's mentors, editors, teachers, classmates, whoever's around, family, your mom, your dad, somebody help you brainstorm those ideas, particularly if you don't feel visuals are one of your strong areas. An example of this, how you might develop a story or visual storytelling ideas is, something kind of common in any community is a local council meets and they're going to discuss and possibly pass an ordinance for rezoning a property from residential to commercial. It sounds kind of bland, could be possibly boring, but it's something common, and there's a visual possibilities abundant in this kind of a story idea because you're talking about residential to commercial. Is there somebody in the neighborhood that doesn't want it to go commercial? Is there an elder who lives nearby who doesn't want it to go commercial? Is there somebody who's resisting selling their property so that the area can't go commercial? Is there nearby commercial properties that want more business? So you have people, you have businesses, you have money, you have neighbors, you have business owners. There are all sorts of visuals, that could work as far as helping tell this story to your readers and viewers. So how do you become a better visual storyteller? First of all, you need to realize that it's the photographer that makes really great images. It's not the gear. Everybody has one of these in your pocket, an iPhone or an Android device, and these have the capability of making really great images. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to be not taking photographs, but making photographs. It's a small difference, taking versus making, but it makes all the difference because taking photographs, because everybody has one of these in their back pocket, everybody has the ability to snap, take pictures. Everybody's taking pictures. Everybody probably has hundreds, if not thousands, of photos on their iOS device that may never be seen again. I know I have probably 1,500 out here, and I used to be really good about backing stuff up. But everybody is taking photographs. Making photographs is being more deliberate. You're thinking about making deliberate choices in composition, making deliberate choices in framing, and what you're including, and how close you're getting, and lighting. That's the difference between taking and making a photograph. And what I want to do is run you quickly through a process I call following the clue for making stronger images. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here. And can everybody see this? Somebody give me some feedback that everybody see a screen full of little images?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. It's kind of strange talking to my computer screen on a webinar because you don't have that visual feedback of students. Anyway, so here's what I'm going to talk about. Jumping back to your smartphone versus a high-end DSLR. These are two images from the university where I work at. Obviously, it wasn't taken recently, a few months ago, December or January, I think. So both of these images, almost identical. One of these was taken with my Canon 5D Mark III. It's about a $3,000 camera setup or more with the lenses and whatnot attached to it. The other one was taken with my iPhone 6S, or no, my iPhone 7. I got an iPhone 7. You would be hard pressed to tell which photo was taken with which device. That's the quality of the camera that you have in your iPhone and in your Android device. And so don't be so wrapped up in whether or not you have a great camera, whether you have all the gizmos and gadgets. As long as you have an iPhone or an Android device in your back pocket, you can make great images. And so to get you moving along and making great images, what I'm going to have you do is what's called follow the clue. And by follow the clue, I break it up into 4 areas. C for close, L for light, U for understand, and E for emotion. Clue, close, light, understand, and emotion. So the first one is get close. This is one of the areas that I see is probably most problematic with amateur or beginning photographers, is they don't get close enough to their subject. They get into an environment that they want to show everything in the image. You don't need to show everything in an image to make it compelling. Here we have a photograph of my granddaughter from actually quite a few years back. She just turned 10. You look at this image and you look at it and you go, well, what is she doing? She's swinging. We can tell that. And where is she at? A park. Can we see the entire swing? No. Can we see the park? No. You need to make sure you assume that your viewers and your readers are smart enough to put 2 and 2 together, that we don't need to show them the entire swing. We don't need to show them the entire park to know that this cute little girl is swinging in a park. Get close. Get down, especially if you're dealing with children, get down into their environment, get low. This photograph, I was driving by in Chillicothe, Ohio, and saw these 2 little girls on a sidewalk doing something very interesting, doing something very, I mean, they were really engaged. So I stopped and I had to check it out and find out what they were up to, being the journalist that I am. And these 2 were doing their own little part in the world to make the world a better place. It had just rained, and as everybody knows, when it rains, worms come out of the sidewalks, and these 2 girls were rescuing worms from the sidewalk and moving them from the sidewalk to the grass to save them from drying out and being eaten up by birds. So you get close. Because I'm close, I can get in here, and if you look close enough, you can even see a little worm on her hand. You get close, and you get into this space, and this kid who's about really to biff it hard on a ramp on his bike. He landed pretty hard, but he got up and he was fine. Get close. One of the great things about iOS devices is that you can get into these different spaces. This photograph of kids on a merry-go-round would be a fun image if I wasn't on the merry-go-round with them. But one of the great things about being a photographer is you get to go different places and do strange things because you have a camera or a camera bag. And I had a lot more fun making this image and made a much stronger image because I got on the merry-go-round with them. I got close. And then sometimes you're driving down the street and you see a guy walking down the sidewalk with an iguana on his head. In situations like this, I don't need to see what street he's on. I don't need to see where he's going. He's got an iguana on his head. That's good enough for me. The next area is light. Pay attention to the light. And by light, I don't mean, again, we go back to what amateur and beginning photographers believe. You need all the light you can possibly get. You just need a really good light source. And in this situation, I have nice light coming from an open barn door, and you got this gentleman hand feeding a lamb. It just makes for a really nice, compelling image because I have really nice light falling on him and the lamb. Again, it doesn't have to be direct light. A little bit of backlight, top light, brings out highlights on the facial features. You use the light, as a silhouette, completely from the other side. So we go from light on the subject, light kind of behind the subject, light completely behind the subject. And in this situation, sometimes difficult light can be your friend. I went to this assignment and the gymnasium was completely lit up, lights on, full blast, and I'm setting up for the shot because I knew where the action was going to happen. And I got all set up, composed everything. I was ready for the scene to unfold. And they turn off all the lights in the gymnasium, except for one spotlight on this table setting, this place setting. And I scrambled, adjusted my camera settings, and ended up with a much more compelling image because I had less light than what I originally had. So you don't need a lot of light, you just need good light. understand. One of the keys to good photography is simply understanding what you're trying to photograph. What I'll do sometimes when I arrive in a classroom or arrive at a meeting or even arrive at a sporting event, before I begin taking pictures, I stand there and observe what is happening in that space. It can be a park, it can be a protest, it can be anything. Rather than jumping right in and starting to shoot pictures right away, I'm pausing so I can take a look at the scene and I can take in what's happening and I can have a better understanding of what's going on. You know, understand that, you know, this is a championship baseball game. They won it, ninth inning, home run, and I know where I need to be in that stadium so that when that ball's hit, goes over the wall, I know where they're coming from. If I'm on the other side of the dugout, I'm going to lose this image. Understand means exploring the space a little bit. I was driving by and saw this marching band practicing in a parking lot. Thought, it could make a nice image. From across the parking lot, I couldn't see this kid had these cool reflective mirrored sunglasses. Photographers like shiny reflective things. But as soon as I parked the car, walked up and started exploring the space, I saw this kid's sunglasses and thought, I think I can work with this. And if you look close enough on the left, on his right sunglasses, you can kind of see me in the corner of his sunglasses. But I thought, I can make this work. I can get a portrait of him. I can have the rest of the other drummers reflected in his sunglasses. And then I turn around and I find another reflection, another shiny object, and make another picture of a drummer reflected in the drum. But I'm getting these images because I'm getting in that environment and exploring. Camera settings, this gets a little more advanced when you're talking about slowing down shutter speeds and moving with the action. Everybody thinks you need fast shutter speeds to freeze the action. Well, if I freeze all the action, suddenly this guy is zooming by on a motorcycle. He's just standing still with a motorcycle, because in the background becomes frozen as well too. So I slow down the shutter speed. I understand what I'm trying to do with my camera.
Hi, Frank. Real
Yep.
quick. It is only showing the list of slides and not the actual slideshow. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you scroll your screen down to show us the rest of the slides, that would be helpful.
How about now? Can you see the?
No. Are you on a dual screen setup?
No, I'm not. This is. Let me jump back to here. I'm still screenshotting. Let me stop sharing and let me try this again a different way. See a bunch of thumbnails?
Yes.
Larger pictures?
Not just thumbnails. Maybe if you just zoom in on them one by one.
That's what I tried doing. Let me.
Yeah, that works better.
Okay, let's see how large I can make these. Okay, so we are at, so you can see these a little bit better now that I have them blown up. There's the light ones, here's understand. There's the baseball photo, there's reflection, which was probably really hard to see if all you were seeing were little thumbnails. And then understanding, jumping over here to the image on the left-hand side, opening day at the swimming pool. Understand that I'm trying to capture kids diving off the diving board, people enjoying the sun. Understand where I'm trying to compose that. And the last one is E for emotion or eyes. My photography instructor told me at one time to watch the eyes. If you're looking through the eyes, looking through your viewfinder, watch the eyes because they'll tell you the emotion, they'll tell you action, people will give a hint in their eyes and what they're going to do next and when's going to be a great time to take a picture. So we have Santa Claus on the left-hand side over here, just really expressive. Who doesn't like Santa Claus? And the kids giving him a big old hug. The guys on the right-hand side, a cross-country team who agreed that made a pact that if they made it to the state championship, they would shave their heads. You know, a fun image that, because of the reaction of his eyes, makes it more compelling. The emotion of sports over here on the right-hand side. celebrating a point, nearing the state championship win. You know, eyes tell the story. On the left-hand side, we have kids at a cooking class cutting an onion, and everybody knows how painful and that can be, cutting an onion sometimes. You know, again, sports action, again, you know, watching the eyes, looking for that emotion. So if you follow those four things, follow the clue, get close. You know, particularly with an iOS device, getting close means we call it zooming with your feet. You can't, and I'm back now. So because you don't, even if you have one of the new iOS devices with the two lenses in it, zooming in still is not a great thing to do. You're better off zooming with your feet, which means just stepping in, getting close, backing up if you need to back up, because when you zoom, when you pinch on your screen and you pinch and zoom in, all you're doing is really cropping the photo, and you can do that post-processing with Photoshop or some other software, and it'll probably do a better job and more accurately capture what you're trying to do. Let me get back to my notes here real quick. So that's clue. Close, watch the light. Light's your friend. Sometimes when it feels like it's your enemy, sometimes it can work to your advantage. Avoid flash for the most part. That's especially if you're shooting primarily with an iOS device. Just make sure you go on there's your settings and turn that flash off. Don't even leave it on auto. Definitely don't leave it on all the time. Just shut it off and leave it off all the time. You're going to get a lot better images. For those rare occasions you absolutely have to have a little bit of flash, go in there and manually turn it on. But for 99% of what you need an iOS device for and taking pictures, turn that flash off. Understanding, again, know your subject matter and immerse yourself in that environment for a little bit. And emotions, just look for those emotions, because those make really compelling images. So I'm going to pause here real quick before I jump into smartphone mugshots. See if anybody has any quick questions.
I actually do have a question. Oops, sorry.
Sure. No, go right ahead.
I don't know if you're going to touch on this, but how much editing, so post-photo, do you do before you publish your photo from an iPhone or Android?
Yep, as little as possible. There's a number of different software editing titles for everybody. You know, on your desktop environment, you're using Photoshop. That's kind of the industry standard. For an iOS device, my favorite app for editing photos is Snapseed from Google. It's a great tool. It's really quick and easy. There's a number of different ones, whatever one works best for you. The trick is, you know, edit your images, but edit them only as much as they need to be edited. And the underlying rule, the overarching rule should always be you never alter the content of your images. And even the iOS devices or iOS apps have really powerful editing options where you can apply these really heavy filters, or you can actually get in there and you can remove backgrounds, or you can change backgrounds. Don't do that, because that slippery slope of altering reality in your images will cost you a job some point down the line. And somebody will notice it. It doesn't matter how slick it looks or how professional it looks, somebody will notice somewhere, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to be that person that's blasted all over the NPPA for making some of it kind of excessive edit like that. A little bit of color adjustment, lighten and darken a little bit here and there, a little bit of sharpening if it needs it, but basically you're trying to maintain that reality.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I had a question about when it comes to covering breaking news, it might be a little more difficult to understand the subject. So how does that work in principle on the fly? Like, what are your tips for fellows on how to incorporate that into reporting on the fly when it comes to taking photos?
Experience is going to be key, and just some of it's just trial by fire. And And what can help is if you're on breaking news and there's other media there, you can kind of watch what they're doing in the space that they're occupying. So and as long as you're you don't want to completely shadow them, but you might want to a little bit at least observe them if you're completely novice and new to covering a breaking news environment. But as you cover more and more of those, you become more and more familiar with how law enforcement work, how rescuers work, firefighters work, what their boundaries kind of are, and how close you can kind of feel. And if you're in a community, working in a community for a number of years, you end up developing relationships with some of these men and women, and that helps a little bit too. But in the heat of the moment, just make sure you're paying attention to your environment and your surroundings, whether it's particularly your own for your own safety, but also so you're not crossing a line and finding yourself in handcuffs in the back of a cruiser or an unnecessary confrontation that doesn't need to go there. Yeah. Anybody else? Pause for a drink.
Frank,
yeah.
I was specifically just wondering, because I work with a digital camera as well, and I'm wondering what avenue, when would I be using an actual phone and when would I choose to use the digital camera?
That's a good question. I think the majority of the work, particularly if you're a photographer, if you've got the DSLR, you're using that for the majority of your work. But there are instances where an iOS device, a phone, can save your butt if you lose it. And I'll be honest, I've gotten to an assignment, forgot my CF card, and went, what am I going to do now? And I had an iOS device with me. Took a picture. It was the first time I actually photographed and published an assignment using an iOS device, and it worked fine. And the more I use the iOS device, the more I like how little there is between me and the subject matter. I can focus on the image itself rather than the process as much as with having that DSLR equipment. But the iOS device is great because it gets into places that it's tough with a DSLR. And so I would keep an iOS device handy for those really weird angles or really low angles. Someplace that's really tough. If I think back to that image where I was showing those two girls on the sidewalk with the worms, that was shot with a DSLR, and that's me laying on the ground on a wet sidewalk, trying to make sure I got the right angle and make sure I'm in focus. That becomes a lot easier with an iOS device, where I can kind of kneel down and I can frame it up, and I can just hold the phone down there, in that space, and even get tighter, you can get lower if I want to. So it's really, you're looking at it more of as a tool, and just one more tool in your camera bag, and being able to help you tell the story in the best way possible, the most creative way possible.
So we have one last question before the next section.
Sure.
This one from Emily Dunford via the YouTube, one of our fellows actually. How do you get pictures of people in action without them seeing you? Oftentimes I feel like you try to be invisible and take a picture, but they'll stop you. They'll see you, so they stop.
You need to, how to describe this? You need to do your best to be invisible and to interact as little as possible with the people you're trying to photograph. If you're interacting with them and you're smiling and whatnot, you become part of their environment, and that's why they're stopping and doing what they're doing. If you are focused on being a photographer and you are focused on telling the story and documenting what's happening in front of you, you become invisible, or at least a little bit more invisible. And the longer you're in that space and the longer you're doing that, the more, you're never completely invisible, but you're less distracted the more you're operating that environment. And I'm thinking in different spaces, in different assignments I have done, if I find that I have one person who is completely taken out of the situation and they're focused on me every time my camera clicks, I leave that environment. And I just move to someplace else in the space and try to focus someplace else. And sometimes me being in their peripheral and they're seeing me do my work someplace else, I can come back to that if I have to. But most people will tend to ignore you after a while, and to some degree at least. But the key for me, I guess, is just trying to minimize your interaction with the people you're trying to take a picture of. When journalists, reporters, when they're interviewing, they give a lot of verbal feedback. You know, when they're doing the interviews, they want all sorts of eye contact and connection and to feed that conversation they're having. But I don't want that as a photojournalist. I'm trying to blend in as much as I possibly can. So, should we go ahead and move on? Okay. So the next one I'm going to talk about real quickly is smartphone mugshots. Most stories, not all stories lend themselves to visuals, but almost all stories would benefit from at least having 1 or 2 mugshots of your key sources. And because everybody has one of these in their pockets, it's easy to make a photograph of somebody, but it's also very easy to make a bad photograph of somebody. Because you're stuck with one lens on here, and it's a wide angle lens. And if you've ever seen, the closer you get to an object with the wide angle lens, the more distortion you have. So 2 things I'm going to tell you about taking mugshots or basic portraits is when you're taking a picture of somebody, control the situation. Because a mugshot, because a portrait is, basically it's not a manufactured situation, but you're setting somebody up in an environment and making them pose. You have 100% control of that situation. If you find that they're in a place with a busy background, move them to a clean background. If you have control of the situation, take control of that situation. And the other key is filling the frame, but you're going to fill the frame with cropping. And I'm going to go ahead and share another screen here. And share embarrassing photos of myself. So this is what you can do. This is taken with my iPhone about 40 minutes ago. Filling the frame. My nose, which is plenty large all by itself, doesn't need any help, suddenly becomes much larger because I'm using a wide angle lens really close to my face. If I back up the camera over here on the right hand side at arm's length, take a picture, because the sensors in your iOS devices and your Androids are so large that you can take a picture like this, crop it down, you have a much nicer looking picture. I promise you, if you take a picture of your subject like this and you publish that, they're not going to be real happy with you. But if you take this picture, crop it down, this is still large enough to print as a 5x7 in print, and it's certainly large enough for mug size in print or even mug size on a website. So back up, I talked about getting close. Getting close is good, but sometimes that means getting close by cropping. I mean, your sensor has some limitations, so you don't want to back off too far, but you can make a nice looking mugshot using your iOS device. And just doing a little bit of cropping. Any other questions about that before I jump to quickly for cut lines? Okay, we're going to talk quickly about cut lines. And my photography students, this is probably their least favorite part of the whole semester because nobody likes talking about cut lines and most of them don't like writing cut lines. But they're important, and some textbooks call them probably the most important, most read item in the newspaper, but is the least amount paid attention to it by the people who write them, because they don't think they're important. But they're important because they provide context to the images that we create. And let me go ahead and share a screen here again. So can you see this fine? I can see. Talking about cut lines. Remember this sentence, these sentences, and this is why I'm sharing this screen. It's mostly words, but write this down. Who does what, where, when, who did what, how, and or why. what you can do if you have this written down someplace, and I used to do this with AP style book, you write down notes, you write down little cheat sheets for stuff that you constantly are going back to provide a reference for your own self, is if you have these two sentences, you can write a cut line. Because the first sentence which is the who, does, what, where, and when, and the second sentence in a cut line, if it needs one, is the who, did, what, how, and why. And your first sentence uses present tense verbs and includes the who, what, where, and when. The core, what you need, the bare minimum you need for a cut line is the who, what, when, where, and when. And it always uses a present tense verb. The second sentence will include the how and the why if it needs it, and it's always past tense. And of course, your byline, everybody likes to get credit for the work that they do, so make sure you're including a byline, who you are, and what publication you're working for. And so the example I show here is of this girl with this cat, holding this cat. And again, providing context, she looks kind of sad. Why is she clutching this kitten? It's a compelling image, but why is it compelling? Well, here's the cut line. Clea Brumette clutches her cat Spike after firefighters rescued her from her home in Chillicothe, Ohio, Friday, January 27th, 2005. Brumette and her family came home after school to find firefighters battling the fire at their home, which still contained their dog and 2 cats, all of which survived the fire. By me at the Gazette. So you have the who, the girl here, clutches her cat Spike. Clutches, present tense verb, strong verb, always try to use strong verbs. Where, at her home in Chillicothe, Ohio, the when, and then the how and the why. Came home after school to find firefighters battling. And you want to keep cut lines short and succinct. They don't need to be 5 paragraphs, 5 sentences long, a long paragraph. You can get that much information. And occasionally, if it's a standalone photograph that doesn't have an accompanying story, having more information is good. My goal as a photojournalist a number of times was to gather as much information as I could on the scene, whether it was for a feature photo or for breaking news, so that I could write a short story if I had to when I got back to the newsroom. And of course, accuracy is key. Make sure you're getting proper names. That's kind of journalism 101. But so that's the essence of a cut line. You want the who, the what, the where, and the when in that first sentence, and make sure it's present tense. And then any additional information comes after that in a second sentence. Questions from anybody? Cut lines aren't as fun to talk about as the other stuff, but they are a necessity. That is pretty much everything that I have for today. I would be happy to answer more questions about this or any other kind of visual storytelling questions. We have a couple minutes before we have to wrap up. Anybody? Trying to think if there's anything I didn't touch on. Let me scroll through my notes, see if I skipped over anything. No, I think I touched on everything I wanted to. Make sure you're, those planning stages, you're thinking about visuals right off the bat. The last thing you want to do is have the story written and start thinking about visuals. That you're way behind the curve on that. And you're not doing yourself any favors if you're the one that has to go out and try to make those visuals for your story. And you're certainly not making any friends with any photographers or editors if you have a story written and you're saying, oh, by the way, I need some photos. Can you go take some photos for me? So you end up with much stronger storytelling if visuals are part of the initial story planning process. That's all I got. What do you think, AJ?
All right. Well, that is it. Let me get our next upcoming Hold on, let me get this real quick. Let's get my handy dandy webinar list here. Where did it go? Oh, goodness. Yeah, so we will be having several webinars coming up soon. So our next one is going to be next week. That would be May 29th, same bat time, same bat channel. Well, different bat channel technically, with Graham Lee Brewer at 3 p.m. Central Time, May 29th. Topic is fellowship, reporting, and beyond. So we will be broadcasting that on YouTube, and we will be meeting more of our fellows, and we will be having more opportunities to engage with our fellows. So I hope that y'all will pop on and hang out with us. So
I've got one more thing. Can I interject one more time?
Yeah, go for it.
Before we completely sign off, I just want to invite everybody who's here, if they have any kind of question about photography or video, visual stuff, to feel free to send me a message on Slack, however you want to get a hold of me. I can talk photography all day long. So I'm always happy to talk about and answer questions about photography and visual storytelling. So if you don't have a question here or think of one later on, feel free to get a hold of me later on. I'd be happy to answer any questions I can address.
All right. Again, for those watching, we will be broadcasting another webinar coming up very soon. That's in 1 week. I think these come pretty quickly. So again, 3 p.m. Central Time, about fellowship and community and journalism. So with Graham Lee Brewer from High Country News. So we'll see you then. And for now, we will be signing off. And our fellows all say, give a wave, everybody. So I'm going to click our stop broadcast, and you can continue to view this video as long as YouTube exists. And thank you for joining us for our first webinar.